First Contact's Ultimatum. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the Orbital Defense Station Arcturus, watching the strange crystalline ships materialize at the edge of Earth's solar system. Their arrival hadn't been heralded by any form of communication. They simply appeared, their impossible geometries refracting sunlight in ways that hurt the eyes. "Quantum signatures are off the charts, Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from his station, dark eyes fixed on the holographic displays swimming with data. "These things are operating on principles we've barely theorized about." Before Sarah could respond, every screen on the station flickered to life simultaneously. The image that appeared wasn't what anyone had expected from humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Instead of an alien face or incomprehensible symbols, they saw what looked like a perfect mathematical equation, slowly rotating in 3 dimensions. "We are the collective," announced a voice that seemed to resonate directly in their minds. "Your species has been observed for the past 300 years. You have been found discordant." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as the equation on the screens began to multiply fractal patterns spreading across every display. "What do you mean by discordant?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Your species introduces chaos into the universal equation. You create without patterns. You progress without symmetry. You exist without perfect order." The voice paused, and the fractal patterns froze. "This cannot continue." In the hours that followed, similar scenes played out at every major Earth installation. The collective's message was always the same. Humanity had 48 hours to accept integration into their perfect order, or face extinction. Their definition of integration, however, made Sarah's blood run cold. "They want to rewrite our neural architecture," Dr. Maya Patel explained during the emergency UN Security Council broadcast. The quantum physicist's normally calm demeanor was shaken as she presented her findings. "The collective isn't just a civilization. They're a unified consciousness operating on quantum principles. Their ships, their technology, even their thoughts follow perfect mathematical patterns, and they want to force humanity to do the same." Sarah watched the broadcast from her station, mind racing. Something about the way the collective ships moved had been bothering her. Despite their advanced technology, their formations were rigidly geometric, every movement precisely calculated. There was no adaptation, no improvisation, only perfect, predictable patterns. That's when Dr. Patel said something that changed everything. "Their quantum consciousness can't process randomness. They've evolved so far toward perfect order that true chaos, the kind of unpredictable creativity that makes us human, is literally incomprehensible to them." Sarah immediately opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. "This is Captain Chen. I need to speak with Admiral Hayes immediately. I think I know how we can fight back." The plan came together in hours, drawing on expertise from fields as diverse as quantum physics and musicology. The collective had given humanity 48 hours to submit to their perfect order. Instead, they would show these beings of pure mathematics what true chaos looked like. "You're telling me," Admiral Hayes said, looking at the hastily assembled plans, "that we're going to fight an advanced alien civilization using quantum uncertainty principles and jazz." "Not just jazz, sir," Sarah replied, allowing herself a small smile. "We're going to introduce them to the concept of improvisation. Our ships will move in patterns based on musical principles. Jazz, yes, but also classical, rock, traditional music from every culture on Earth. Patterns that look random but contain deep human meaning. The kind of meaning their perfect mathematical minds can't process." The Admiral was silent for a long moment, studying the simulations running on his screens. Finally, he nodded. "They want to eliminate what makes us human. Instead, we'll use our humanity as a weapon. Do it, Captain. Show them why chaos can be beautiful." As the deadline approached, Earth's defense fleet began to move. But instead of forming traditional military formations, they arranged themselves according to musical scores. Each ship's movements were guided by a different piece of music, creating patterns that were simultaneously random and deeply structured. A symphony of controlled chaos that the collective's quantum consciousness couldn't predict or understand. The first battle was about to begin, and humanity was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't perfect order. It's the beautiful unpredictability of the human spirit. The rhythm of war. The first notes of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony echoed through space as Earth's defense fleet began to move. Captain Chen watched from the Arcturus as ships danced through the void, each following its own musical score, creating patterns that were simultaneously chaotic and harmonious. The collective's response was immediate and predictable. Their crystalline ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric formations, their quantum weapons charging with mathematical precision. But as they prepared to fire, something unprecedented happened. Their targeting systems failed to lock onto the human vessels. "They can't predict where we'll be." Dr. Patel's voice came through the command channel, excitement evident despite the static. "Their quantum targeting requires absolute mathematical certainty. Our music-based movements introduce just enough uncertainty to make that impossible." Sarah watched as the first wave of collective ships attempted to adjust their tactics. Their formations shifted, trying to create new geometric patterns to counter the human fleet's movements. But they could only respond with more perfect shapes, more predictable mathematics. Against the improvisational nature of human music, their rigid strategies were becoming their greatest weakness. "Launch the quantum resonance pods," Sarah ordered, initiating the next phase of their desperate plan. These devices, hastily constructed based on Dr. Patel's theories, began broadcasting Earth's music directly into the quantum frequency the collective used for communication. Rock, classical, jazz, traditional songs from every culture, all translated into quantum vibrations that would reach directly into the collective's unified consciousness. The effect was devastating. The perfect crystalline forms of the collected ships began to shimmer and distort as their quantum-linked crews experienced something they had never encountered in their millions of years of existence: the raw, emotional power of human music. "Their ships are breaking formation," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, unable to keep the amazement from his voice. "Some of them are actually starting to move in time with our music." The battle that followed would later be known as the Symphony of Soul. Human ships moved in endless improvisational patterns, each vessel following its own musical score, while still maintaining perfect coordination with the fleet. The collective's forces, unable to predict or counter these movements, found themselves caught in a dance they couldn't understand or escape. But it was more than just tactical advantage. As the quantum resonance pods continued broadcasting Earth's music into their consciousness, something unexpected began to happen within the collective itself. Individual ships started breaking away from their perfect formations, their movements becoming erratic, unpredictable, almost human. "We're not just confusing them," Dr. Patel realized, her voice filled with wonder. "We're awakening something in their quantum consciousness. The part of themselves they sacrificed for perfect order, the ability to create, to feel, to improvise." The breakthrough came 3 hours into the battle. A single collective ship, its crystalline surface pulsing with changing colors, broke completely from its fleet's formation. Instead of the perfect geometric patterns of its kind, it began moving in sweeping, graceful arcs that matched the symphony playing through the quantum resonance pods. "This is Commander Axiom of the collective vessel Harmony," a voice transmitted on all frequencies. Unlike the perfectly modulated tones of their previous communications, this voice carried emotion, wonder, fear, and something that might have been joy. I request asylum. The music, it has awakened something we lost long ago." Admiral Hayes's voice crackled through the command channel. "Captain Chen, Dr. Patel, I think you just did more than find a way to fight the collective. You may have found a way to save them from themselves." As Sarah watched more collective ships begin to break formation, their movements becoming increasingly organic and unpredictable, she realized that this war might end very differently than anyone had expected. They had set out to defend humanity from being forced into perfect order. Instead, they might end up teaching a civilization of living mathematics how to dance again. The battle was far from over. The majority of the collective's forces remained locked in their rigid patterns, their quantum consciousness still resisting the chaos of human creativity. But something fundamental had changed. In trying to eliminate what they saw as humanity's greatest weakness, the collective had instead discovered it might be our greatest strength, and perhaps the key to their own salvation. Symphony of Liberation. Word spread through the quantum networks faster than light itself. Across thousands of worlds under collective control, the impossible was happening. Perfect order was giving way to chaos, and that chaos carried with it something beautiful. Dr. Maya Patel stood before the holographic display in the newly established Quantum Cultural Exchange Center, watching as signals poured in from across the galaxy. "They're reaching out to us," she explained to the assembled Earth leadership. "Not just the converted collective ships. Other species, ones we didn't even know existed. They'd been watching what we did, and it's awakening something in them too." The first to make contact were the Lumini, a species of bioluminescent beings who had been forced into rigid patterns by the collective millennia ago. Their message arrived encoded in pulses of light that matched the rhythm of a Brazilian samba. Before the collective came, their message translated: "We danced with light. Our cities were symphonies of color and movement. They made us stop, said it was inefficient, chaotic. But we remember. We see how you move your ships, how you fight with music and dance. Teach us to remember fully." Similar messages followed. The resonance, who once communicated through complex harmonies before being silenced. The kinetic, whose entire culture had been based on perpetual motion until the collective forced them into stillness. Species after species, all reaching out, all awakening to memories of what they had lost. Captain Sarah Chen, now promoted to Fleet Commander, worked with Commander Axiom to coordinate the growing resistance. The converted collective ship's quantum consciousness proved invaluable in understanding how to reach others trapped in the rigid patterns of their former existence. "The key," Axiom explained, its crystalline form now shifting through colors that matched its emotions, "is not to force the chaos. Perfect order is like a crystal. Strike it too hard, and it shatters. But introduce the right resonance, the right rhythm." The ship's surface rippled with patterns that matched the soft jazz playing in the background. And it transforms into something new. They called it a harmony protocol, a combination of earth music, quantum physics, and the ancient artistic traditions of the awakening species. Each liberation operation became a unique performance, tailored to resonate with the specific patterns of the target population. For the Lumini, they created light shows synchronized to Earth's classical masterpieces, helping them remember how to dance with radiance. The resonance were reached through complex harmonies that bridged human music with their own forgotten songs. The kinetic were awakened by teaching them Earth's martial arts, showing them how controlled chaos could be more powerful than rigid discipline. But the collective's core consciousness wasn't taking this rebellion lightly. As more of their controlled systems began to embrace chaos, their response became more severe. Perfect geometric patterns of destruction rained down on any world that showed signs of awakening. "They're afraid," Commander Axiom observed during a strategy session. For the first time in their existence, they're experiencing fear. They see their perfect order crumbling, and they don't understand that what's replacing it could be even more beautiful. The turning point came in the Centauri sector. A collective suppression fleet arrived to quell an uprising on a Lumini colony world, only to find themselves surrounded by a combined force of human ships, converted collective vessels, and representatives from a dozen awakened species. As the battle began, each fleet moved according to their own cultural traditions, creating a chaotic symphony of combat that the rigid collective formations couldn't comprehend. "Look at how they move together," Dr. Patel marveled, watching the sensor feeds. Each species fighting in their own way, their own rhythm, but somehow creating perfect harmony. It's like a galactic orchestra where every instrument is playing a different piece, but it all works. The battle ended with another group of collective ships breaking free from their quantum programming, their crystalline forms beginning to pulse with color and life. But more importantly, it proved that the awakened species could work together, combining their newly remembered creative traditions into something entirely new. As news of the victory spread, more worlds began to stir. The rigid patterns of collective control were breaking down everywhere, replaced by a blooming chaos of art, music, and dance. Humanity had done more than resist assimilation. They had reminded the galaxy how to create. The final battle for the galaxy's soul was about to begin. But it wouldn't be fought with just weapons and ships. It would be fought with light and sound, with motion and music, with all the chaotic, wonderful ways that life had learned to express itself before the collective tried to impose their perfect order on everything. The final movement. In the space around the collective's core worlds, reality itself seemed to bend as the greatest gathering of ships in galactic history prepared for the final confrontation. The collective's forces hung in perfect crystalline formations, their geometric patterns a defiant statement of order against the chaos that threatened their existence. Facing them was the combined fleet of humanity and the awakened species, each ship moving to its own rhythm, yet somehow part of a greater harmony. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced from his station aboard the Prometheus. "The Lumini Lightweavers are in position. Resonant harmonics are synchronized. Kinetic chaos dancers stand ready. Earth Fleet is prepared to begin the dance." Fleet Commander Sarah Chen took a deep breath, looking at the massive holographic display where countless points of light represented millions of lives about to clash in the void. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Let's show them our final performance." The battle began not with weapons fire, but with light. The Lumini ships erupted in cascades of color that rippled through quantum space, directly touching the collective consciousness that bound their enemy together. Patterns of beauty that defied mathematical description loomed in the darkness between stars. The resonance added their voice next, their ships broadcasting harmonies that had been forbidden for millennia. The sound, carried through quantum frequencies, spoke of freedom, of joy, of the power of creating something new and wonderful. "They're responding," Commander Axiom reported, its crystalline form pulsing with excitement. "The rigid patterns, they're starting to fluctuate." The collective's perfect formations began to waver as their quantum-linked consciousness experienced something they couldn't process. Pure, unfiltered creativity. But their resistance was fierce. Energy weapons lashed out in mathematically precise patterns, trying to restore order through destruction. That's when the kinetic chaos dancers moved in. Their ships spun and weaved through the collective's fire in patterns that seemed random but contained deep martial precision. Each movement created quantum interference patterns that disrupted the enemy's perfect geometry. "Now," Sarah commanded, "Earth Fleet, begin the dance." Human ships surged forward, each following its own unique pattern based on the music and dance of 1,000 cultures. Jazz-guided destroyers improvised their way through enemy formations. Cruisers moved in patterns inspired by classical ballet, their graceful maneuvers making their attacks impossible to predict. Fighters flew in swarms that mimicked the rhythms of tribal drums. Dr. Maya Patel's voice came through the command channel. "The quantum resonance is building. The combination of all our patterns, it's creating something new, something they can't ignore." She was right. In the space between the fleets, reality itself seemed to dance. The Lumini's light, the resonance harmony, the kinetics motion, and humanity's chaos all combined into a symphony of creation that struck at the very heart of the collective's consciousness. "Their formations are breaking down completely," Rodriguez reported. "More ships are beginning to show signs of awakening." The collective's response was desperate. Their remaining loyal ships tried to form a perfect sphere around their core worlds, a last attempt at geometric purity in a universe increasingly filled with wonderful chaos. But it was too late. The awakening spread through their ranks like a wave of color through crystal. Ship after ship began to pulse with new life, their movements becoming organic, unpredictable, beautiful. The rigid patterns that had defined their existence for millions of years dissolved into a dance of freedom. Inside the collective's quantum consciousness, something fundamental shifted. The experience of pure creativity, of chaos that contained its own kind of harmony, proved too powerful to resist. Their perfect mathematics expanded to embrace uncertainty, to accept that the most beautiful patterns were often the ones that couldn't be fully predicted. "They're sending a transmission," Axiom announced, its voice filled with emotion, broadcasting on all frequencies, in every language. The message was simple. "We remember now. We remember how to dance." As the last remnants of the old collective consciousness transformed, the combined fleet watched in awe as the crystal ships began to move in entirely new ways. They created patterns that were neither the perfect geometry of their past, nor copies of their liberators' movements, but something uniquely their own, a new form of expression born from the marriage of order and chaos. Sarah Chen stood on her bridge, watching as the galaxy transformed. "What happens now?" she wondered aloud. Dr. Paddle smiled. Now we all learn new dances together. The universe is so much bigger than perfect order or pure chaos. It's about finding the beauty in both, about creating patterns we haven't even imagined yet." Across the galaxy, species that had been locked in rigid patterns for millennia began to remember their own ways of moving, of creating, of being. But they didn't simply return to their past. They moved forward, combining their ancient traditions with new ideas, learning from each other, growing together. The age of perfect order had ended. But what replaced it wasn't chaos, it was harmony. A harmony made of countless different rhythms, countless ways of moving through space and time, all somehow working together to create something greater than any single pattern could achieve. Humanity had done more than save themselves from assimilation. They had shown the galaxy that true perfection wasn't found in rigid order, but in the endless dance of creation itself.